I think ketamine, it has just enough spice in there and interest that people are willing to do it. And then when they get in the door, then it's easier for them to really dive into these different areas that we're talking about, different modalities. And sometimes the ketamine is the perfect medicine, and it's exactly what they needed to turn off some of those protector mechanisms. And then it's a really beautiful unfolding. And then other times the ketamine isn't quite right, but they're hooked by, this is really going to change my life. This, asking for help and diving into these different areas.
Hello. Welcome back to Ketamine Connections. I'm your host, Anna Krishtal. I'm always excited that you're here. I'm always excited that you're back. Do me a favor, if you've been here before and you're back, leave us a review because it really helps us get the show out there. And it's honestly the best way to thank me for the countless effort that goes into this show and all of the players involved who are just so excited to share this medicine with you. So leave a review wherever you're listening, and thank you in advance for doing that. Today's episode is a guest interview, and I'm really excited about this one for an interesting reason, and that is because I actually met this guest in person before I had him on the show. And that's just fun for me because as this show grows, I get to meet some people in person, others not. The community is growing. And in any case, the way that I met Joe Mach is that I went to an integration circle that he was leading. I always love learning new things. I'm a lifelong student, if nothing else. So I showed up to this integration circle and I loved the level of embodiment of alternative practices, of somatic work, of internal inquiry that Joseph brought to the circle. And I just was thinking, hey, you have amazing medicine that you're sharing with the world. Joe is also a CAP practitioner, ketamine assisted psychotherapy. He's also a therapist that has been in private practice offering Gestalt and IFS therapy. And so he just brings so much to the field. He's also a musician. So there's an element of expression. Gosh, Joe just brings so much to this field and to this work that I thought we need to have Joe on the show. So this episode is with him. We talk about so many things. I think my favorite part of the conversation was talking about Joe's resistance to ketamine as a healing modality. We talk about his background as a musician and how that was his number one goal growing up, and how that changed for him, and now how he's meeting his needs in other ways, the needs that he thought only being a musician could provide. He's now found other ways to meet those needs, and also how life-changing that could be. We talk about his meditation practice and how that informs the work that we do. We talk about how ketamine supersedes, presses the fast forward button on healing, and how he felt about that at first and how he feels about that now. We riff on so many things related to somatic work, to IFS, and all of these alternative modalities that really allow ketamine to become a more holistic experience, right? Because our society is so focused on the ceremony and what we know, what we've studied, as that the more you bring to it in terms of preparation, in terms of integration, in terms of embodiment, the more you can get out of it. So this episode was such a joy to record. And in the show notes, check it out. Joe has a retreat coming up called Making Friends with Your Mind. I mean, who doesn't want that? So much goodness in the episode. Let's go ahead and dive in. Welcome, Joe Mach, to the show. I'm so excited you're here. We met at an event that you were leading at Kuya, and I was like, this guy, he just has so much medicine to share, so much to offer the ketamine space. So let's dive in. The first question, before we do anything else, the first question that we start every interview with, if you can go back and tell the you before you started all this anything, what would you tell them?
Yeah, that's such a good place to start. In the very beginning, let's see. I feel like for the context of this conversation we're having, what I would go back to, because this is a surprise to me that have this role, that I'm doing this with my life and my career. So I feel like I would go back to the probably 20 something Joe who had it in his head that he had to be a musician and a rock star, and that was the only path to happiness and fulfillment, and anything else would fall miserably short, and he would be just crushed if he did anything else. And I would tell him that it's okay that he thinks that. And I would tell him, like, fuck yeah, am I allowed to say,
Yeah.
we cursing here? Is
Yeah,
that
we can
okay?
curse here.
Fuck
Thanks for
yeah,
asking.
man. I would tell him, go for it. I would tell him, that's so great. And I love your courage and I love your charisma, and go get there. Go write your songs and go sing your songs. And I would also let him know he's so much more than his songs. And I would let him know he's, there is the cliche, he can do anything. You can do anything. And what that means is you're not tied to this particular path, and you don't have to just do this thing that you think you needed to do, or that your parents told you to do, or that the culture told you to do. Like, really, you're allowed to do what you're pulled towards. And you're allowed to change your mind, and you're allowed to be surprised and delighted by what the universe has on the other side.
Ooh, I felt that surprise and delight that, like, landed right here in my heart space of the surprise and delight. There's a book by Anne Lamott. What is it? Help, Thanks, Wow.
Yeah.
And yeah, in there she says, if you could choose and write your own story, you would shortchange yourself 100% of the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Love it.
So, how do you think 20-something-year-old Joe would receive that?
Oh, he had it on pretty tight. He had the lid on pretty tight of like, nope, this is what I'm doing. And sometimes you also need that, there is a certain amount of, what would you call that? Intensity, or the willpower that comes with stubbornness, right? You need that single mindedness to create big things in the world, even if there are things that don't end up serving you, let's say, in the long run. So I think he probably would have heard it, but it would have sort of fallen on deaf ears. He would have said, oh, yeah, I hear that. And maybe it would have helped my transition out of that mode down the road, to realize, like, oh, yeah, somebody wise once told me, like, I don't have to stick to this plan just because I've put a lot of energy into it. Yeah, all right, maybe I can let go of this.
So, I wanna ask a question. So, imagine, 20-something-year-old Joe was here and you were telling him about your life now,
Oh,
right? About
yeah.
the work that you do and things like that. What would you even say to him?
That'll be fun. Yeah, we can do some pillow work. I'll bring him. No,
Yeah.
oh, you look so cool. Your outfit is really cool today. You look great. Everyone's going to be so impressed with you. Oh, let me just love him. Yeah, I think if I talked to him about today, he would be very surprised about what I do. He would. I still sort of look at what I do, and I'm like, this is what I get to do, and this I didn't think that I would fall into this path. And but the bigger piece that he would be surprised at is how fulfilling it is. Kind of to the surprise and delight point, that, like, he would be like, oh, you're doing that, you must be unhappy. You must have had to choose a different path that you don't like or begrudging. And I'd say, oh, I love what I do, and I love my family, and I love helping, and I love getting to use my gifts and getting to use my voice. Because that's the thing he was concerned about. Is like, hey, are you getting enough uh, applause out there? Are you getting enough attention, right? And so I get to tell him, like, no, I'm. It's a standing ovation every night inside, and that's what he wanted, and that's what he desperately needed. And I guess, yeah, that's what I would sort of, I could share with him some of the outward details, but to share the inward details, like, oh, there's just so much celebration going on in my system of how I'm doing and what I get to do. And he that's what he really wanted. He chose the stage to get that, but you can get that in any line of work.
Right. Different paths up the mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't you explain to us in your own words what it is that you do? What is the
Yeah.
magic you weave and the voice that you offer the world now?
Yeah. Yeah. So I am a ketamine facilitator here at Kuya, actually, where I'm in one of our ketamine rooms. And I also have my own private practice where I do Gestalt work and IFS, internal family systems work, a little bioenergetics. It's kind of a mix of modalities that I've learned and been trained in. And so those are the main two hats that I wear these days. And really, if I get one layer deeper to talk about what it is I do, I get to go in and I would say assist or guide people back to their center, guide them back to their truest self, highest self. A million words you could talk about it, and that it's a really co-creative experience is what I like about it most. And if I was talking to younger Joe, I'm not here analyzing people. I'm not here fixing. I'm not here trying to figure out. I'm literally holding someone's hand and guiding them through their inner architecture to see what needs some smoothing out and see what needs some loving or some attention or whatever it is. So it's a really beautiful, often difficult job, but it's really, I end up telling people how much fun it is. And it's strange to say that sometimes because I do end up working with people's trauma or people's clients' difficult situations, but it's done with a lightness that brings curiosity, brings fun. And I think that is where the artist in me gets to really come alive. And that it is no different than sitting down on a canvas or sitting down with a guitar, except it's sitting down with a human and seeing what kind of beautiful song we can come up with.
That's beautiful. And so I'm just wondering, in your practice, right? You're bringing some pretty experimental experimental? I mean, I think they're brilliant. Everything that you've mentioned is stuff that I've gotten a lot of healing from, but maybe not as mainstream as say talk therapy, right? Not as mainstream as the conversation of, someone goes to therapy when they're broken and they have to get fixed and all of that. And I think the pandemic has really brought us out of that narrative in a beautiful way. I think it's opened up the conversation of mental health and wellness in a way that was really not present before. And with the people that I'm curious, how many of those tunnel vision 20-something-year-old Joes do you encounter in the work that you do?
Yeah. That was actually a conversation. I feel like yesterday that came up with a client where he was just for the first time asking, he sort of innocently asked about, it's like, can we talk about depression? Is that something you talk about? And it was like, yeah, let's talk about that. And, we're just saying how that used to be such a closeted thing, or it was in the mainstream culture, but the asking of it was still a little bit of a taboo, right? That if you're, I've got to go to therapy, you would say it sheepishly, or you would sort of have a little bit of shame around it. And culturally, it's so great. It's almost in the other direction starting to shift where somebody's like, you get help with that. Why you would get help in any other industry? Why don't you get help with this mental side? So yeah, there's definitely a sea change happening. And, I think it can only create good ripples.
Yeah. So are the people that come to work with you already fairly open-minded, you would say?
Yeah, yeah. So to get to what you were talking about sort of alternative modalities, I do end up attracting people who have. I think the most common is people who've done some talk therapy and have been frustrated by it and have found it to be talking in circles, or have been like, I just felt like it was too mental, too cerebral. And that's what I love. The tools that I've been gifted are very somatic, not of the mind. And so, yeah, it is, I wouldn't say that's like, I'm happy to work with anyone who's, in any place on the spectrum. I've also worked with people who've done 20 years of IFS and 20 years of different therapies in this modality. And then it's really fun because you get to just dive way down deep. There's not a whole lot of context that you have to give. You say, all right, let's just off to the races. So, yeah, I think my style, is a little more alternative, and I tend to attract creatives and people who do have a song inside them who, that's just, I think, the nature of, we could get into manifestation and reality tunnels, but that's the people that I have a certain energy and sort of end up working with people around. I'm sure most therapists and healers would say something similar, that your own work, your own places that you've healed, that becomes the point of attraction for the people that are coming to you.
Yeah, what is it, the phrase they use, turning pain into purpose?
Yep. The wound becomes the gift.
Yeah, it really can, and it's also with everything that you're talking about is, getting out of the conscious mind down into the somatics, which is where the subconscious mind is, and then it just opens up a whole new doorway because our conscious mind is so brilliant, and especially in the internet age and now with AI, it's you can talk yourself into and out of anything 100 times, before you even realize what's happening, right? You're just kind of spinning your wheels, and the gift of saying, "Okay, yes, and let's like hear all the parts of that conversation, right? Let's get into some IFS or whatever you're bringing that day, even if it's like, hey, where's that in the body?" And really getting out of that. So, why don't you explain that a little bit more? Because I'm really familiar with IFS, I'm familiar with Gestalt, I'm familiar with somatics, but maybe the listener right now isn't.
Yeah, I would say that's my favorite moment in any, whether it's a ketamine guided session or my own private practice. My favorite moment is there's like a literally, oftentimes a verbal, like, huh, or it's essentially an aha that's going on. And what is happening in those moments is the mental narrative is suddenly, there's like that aha happens where, oh, I've never seen it in that way, or, oh, now I get what my subconscious was getting at. And so we are a very cerebral culture, and we want to be able to explain things mentally. And I do think that's where the IFS model is so nice, in that it's a very tangible model that you can use use the powers of the mind to help. But yeah, that is also a challenge to get someone to unhook from that mechanism of the mind. And I would say that is where it's these gifts these tools weave together, getting more grounded, getting more embodied. It gets you off of that hamster wheel of knowing, all right, here's what's going on with me. Here's the story with my mom and my parents and this and it's great to have those insights, but they say I think there's an Einstein quote: "The problem can't be solved from the level of consciousness that it was created," and that's a little bit what ends up getting bumped into, I think, in talk therapy, is that you're trying to use the mind to disassemble the mind, and it can be done, but it takes time, and it's a lot faster to go to those deeper layers.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, with my background in hypnotherapy, it's same thing with people coming kind of, frustrated from talk therapy, feeling like they're not really getting anywhere. And one of the main questions that, we as hypnotherapists ask is, how do you want to feel? And after whatever amount of time someone spent thinking about, oh, I'm like this because of this. And it's like you come forward and you're like, here's everything I've discovered about why I'm this way. And I'm like, great, and what do you want, right? And there's just like, whoa, like I hadn't even thought of that, right? And I'm sure similar with IFS, I do a lot of parts work in with hypnosis, similar of just like really like unpacking, right? Like slowing down the conversation a lot enough where you can hear the different players, right? That you can hear the different parts that are speaking. And I don't know about you, but ever since Inside Out became so famous, it's like so easy to talk about parts work now.
Yes, yes. It's again starting to really creep into the culture, and it makes that easier. But it is so interesting, like even what you were saying about slowing down enough to hear the parts. A lot of times, if I'm working with a new client, or even somebody that's not a new client, that we've done it a bunch of times, the first 30 minutes are just getting them, like getting some of it out, and then just slowing down. And then the minute they slow down, I've got one guy I work with, he heals himself every time. It literally, there's this whole energetic thing that happens as soon as it's just a matter of getting him slowed down enough for those different parts of us, those different energies, to start reconfiguring. And the body knows what to do when it's in that relaxed, unfrozen mode. And it's just so, again, it's those moments are really nice for those of us who have a savior complex, or that like, I must be the one to come in and say, it's like, no, I'm literally just planting this person in the ground, God takes over, or the body takes over, and then the healing can start there. So it's that is a challenge, though, is getting us to slow down and getting. Sometimes there's a lot of pain in being in the body. To talk about a trauma-informed podcast here, to just tell somebody like, "Oh, just get in your body and you'll just be healed." Well, if there's a ton of pain and painful things going on in there, that's actually not a helpful thing to say to somebody. So I will maybe preface what I'm saying that, yeah, getting into the body, getting grounded and slowing down is a very powerful starting point, but it's not an available starting point for everybody. Sometimes there's a lot of prep work even to feel safe enough just to take a slow breath and be in the body. That's sort of a advantage. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's so valid to talk about how if someone's mind is shooting out, right? If someone's really cerebral and they're living in their mind and there's a lot of overthinking, there's a reason for that, right? There's a very big reason. I mean, I like to call the thinking mind, the brain, the money maker, right? And we need to make money to survive. And so it's like there's a reason why this is the forefront of the conversation. There's a reason why the patterning is the way it is. And a lot of the times it was a big realization for me when I started dropping into the body and I started feeling all the places where I hold tension, where I hold pain and things like that. And I go, oh, no wonder. No wonder I shoot out, right? No wonder I go somewhere else with my mind, because learning how to be present. I mean, monks do it their whole life on mountaintops. It's not an easy thing. Otherwise, they'd be done by age 4. They're just getting started.
Totally. And that's, again, to credit the IFS model, that it allows for so much understanding and compassion to the way you're built, the way I'm built. There's not a like, oh yeah, you're in your head again, you suck. It's, oh, you're in your head again. Wow, that you must really feel like you need to shake your moneymaker. You must really feel like you have to be looking out. Whatever it is, there's just a large amount of grace that's embedded in the model.
Yeah. And I feel like in the past few days, maybe, at the time of this recording, tomorrow is a big full moon eclipse. So, the moon affects water. We're made up of water. So there's a lot there. There's a lot of things happening in the stars, in the sky, on the planet Earth. There's just a lot happening. And I feel in the past few days, I've had a lot of conversations with people afraid to slow down. What would you tell that person that says, no, when I had someone recently tell me that their worst fear is shavasana at the end of a yoga class, because
Right.
that's when everything comes out. So what's a good entryway that you would offer that person?
Yeah, I mean, that would be what they would call an IFS a trailhead. All right, let's talk to the part of you that is freaked out by slowing down, and first start by really validating it. They're like, oh yeah, I understand that that's there for you, and like I've been that way before. It's okay. Starts just that sort of complimentary style. Just starts helping that person and that part to feel okay with itself. And there's if we had time, we would go fully into that. If they had less time, I would just sort of invite that person to, sort of let that part know we're not going to get overwhelmed. Usually overwhelm is the big red flag that anything is worried about. I don't want to get overwhelmed. The emotion's going to be too big, or when I slow down, it's just going to be an onslaught and it's just going to be too big. So you just even offering to it that like, let's not let that overwhelm you. Let's not get overwhelmed here. A lot of times that's where I'll have someone have a breath and encourage them to let some of that anxiety out on the breath.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a very somatic and it's a very safe. There's very few mechanisms in the body that will say like, well, I'm not allowed to breathe out. You might not want to make sound, but you can breathe out and you can use that as a release valve for whatever's going on. Right? So if the part is worried that it's just going to be this huge release and it's going to be too much, like, all right, well, let's just start with a really nice teensy little breath. And then how do they feel? They feel a little bit better. So it's almost like instead of if Shavasana is too much, let's start with a micro dose Shavasana. Start there and then develop trust. And once you did that and, oh, look, the sky didn't fall when you did that. Well, let's try 2 of them. Now let's hold it a little bit more. I think that would probably be my starting point.
Yeah. You would love, I teach a yoga class. I'll give you some details about it, but the details of where you can come and if you wanted to attend since we're in the same city, but for the sake of the podcast, it's a very slow class and I do a lot of vagal toning in the class. And so we combine different sounds with breath. And it's so funny. I've been teaching it for a long time. My explanation has evolved, but I remember when I first started doing it because it's so different from how I used to live, like as, a corporate executive in New York City. If I walked into my class now, I would lose my mind. And I just want to have a lot of loving compassion for that person that is so resistant, or not even resistant, but unaware of how magical slowing down can be, right? How insightful, and there is medicine there. There was no medicine for me there at the time. And so I used to tell people, here's what we're going to do in this next hour. If you're waiting for this class to like pick up, it's never going to. If you needed to like take care of yourself, the door's open, you can leave at any moment. And also know that the more activated you are by this practice, the more you need it. So what would happen if you stayed in the room?
Yep.
And it's a beautiful offering. It's one of my favorite offerings. And it's so funny because I like tracking people as they're leaving, and I teach it on Monday nights. So just a few nights ago, I definitely had someone like on their phone, like running out of there. And I'm just like, oh, I love you. That was me, like that was me just being like, I can't believe that just happened, and who knows? I don't know what's going on in that person's world, but it's that energy of leaving is very different than everyone else just kind of like floating out. Yeah.
100%. I love you use the word unaware, right? If you aren't aware of it, you can't catch it, that's what's running you, that's what's going on. And so it is why like the mindfulness practice or an awareness practice is really the overarching umbrella of all of these modalities. That once you catch, oh, my mind is super busy, the unraveling is going to take a long time, but you've already started unraveling it because you've caught that, oh, I'm stuck on moneymaker or whatever it is. I actually we can steer that towards talking about ketamine a little bit. I had a client just very recently, and that happened in the session where they have done a few different psychedelics, and they were sort of used to like, oh, my mind, very cerebral person, my mind just loves, can you play upbeat music? Because my mind just needs to go, and that's when I get these downloads, and it's great. And it was like halfway through, the music that I chose got very ambient and very slow and we hit a huge bump. He was very activated by that and wanted the journey to go a certain way. And I said, okay, well, we can change the music, but we could also look at what's here. And we're still in the unraveling process, but it's sort of similar to what you were saying that, just catching when there's a unawareness.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's Carl Jung, right? Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. Right. I'm just fated to only like fast music. I'm fated to only receive downloads when I'm spinning, my money maker, whatever it is. So it's beautiful. And you said the word unaware. And can we talk about how you were unaware of the magic of ketamine, or how you were resistant to even offering this?
Totally. Yeah. I think that's, I can definitely look at my own blind spot that existed, that still exists. I mean, I do, the more people I talk to who are in there's 100 different ways to administer and to facilitate. And, I still have a very limited world around that, limited experiences. But yeah, I would say I came at my spiritual path, let's say, from much more of a meditator background. That was sort of the beginning point. Some people go off and do ayahuasca. They go off and do this. They go off. I went off and signed up for a Vipassana retreat with only having meditated a cumulative, I don't know, 2 hours total. I was doing like the what's that app? Home
Headspace.
Headspace. That's the one.
Yeah.
I've done a few minutes of meditation. I can go and do 10 days, no problem. Crazy. Why do
Wait,
you
I
do?
have to pause you. I have to pause you because I'm cracking up, and our listeners might not know that a Vipassana retreat is a 10-day silent retreat that is one of the most stringent meditation retreats, I think, in the world, other than going on a monastic path. Like, it's silent, there's no eye contact, you're meditating from like 4 in the morning. There's very little food. Like, it's very, very it's discipline. It's high on the discipline scale. So to have, I mean, I've known people that have years of meditation that go into that experience and have an unraveling, but to have, just
There
a
was
little bit of
monks
headspace.
leaving. I was like, oh no, the monks didn't make it. Oh, I'm screwed. What are we doing? Yeah. To go from 0 to 60. I mean, it was a bold. I would recommend anyone out there thinking of it, maybe a more gradual. If you feel called, go for it, but do it a little more gradually. Maybe do a 1 day sit first, and before you bite off the whole elephant.
Fair.
But so yes, that was my real awakening, was that retreat. And so that is the background context for the rest of my journey, is sort of coming from a meditation path. And there's probably a little bit of meditator's pride of it's the slow way and the steady way, and you grind it out. And so I think part of my my view of plant medicine and some of the biases was that people are looking for the fast solution, easy fix. And prior to that, actually, I will add in, prior to my Vipassana journey, if I'm really honest, I was skeptical due to fear. I was afraid of plant medicine. Afraid. I had our drummer in my old band was every 2 weeks, he was, hey, come on, you just go do mushrooms. He was a big fan of mushrooms. And I'd be like, no, I would make up some excuse about why it wasn't the right thing. But if I'm honest, it was like, I'm scared to do that. I don't know what's under there, and I'm scared to go there. And so the nice thing, Vipassana, 10 days of going there gave me confidence that after then, anytime somebody offered psychedelics, I was suddenly like, yes, I'm no longer, I have faced a lot of the things that I was afraid to face. So yeah, I think the main place of skepticism was that are people using it as to shortcut their journey. And I still maintain that is around, just like in any field. There's people looking for a shortcut. But I think it has really pivoted, as ketamine in particular, because of its legal status. It gives people a place to start, just like Vipassana was a place to start for me. Gives them a place that feels accessible, that feels like something they can ask and not be ashamed of. That's what we were talking about earlier, just in terms of therapy in general. People are still afraid to reach out to a therapist. It's intimidating to reach out. And, there's so many barriers in the way. Whereas I think ketamine, it has just enough spice in there and interest that people are willing to do it. And then when they get in the door, then it's easier for them to really dive into these different areas that we're talking about, different modalities. And sometimes the ketamine is the perfect medicine, and it's exactly what they needed to turn off some of those protector mechanisms. And then it's a really beautiful unfolding. And then other times the ketamine isn't quite right, but they're hooked by, this is really going to change my life. This, asking for help and diving into these different areas. So that's my quick evolution of.
I agree. It's a shortcut. It's absolutely a shortcut. And also, I don't know how I feel. I don't have that same resistance, even though I spent many years as a meditator. I think I'm 21 years into my yoga journey. 12 years of teaching yoga and all of that. And it's for me, I I used to have that, but more so I think in the yoga world. And when I transitioned from yoga to meditation, I had already been practicing yoga for probably 10 years, and meditation was excruciating. Oh my, it took me so long. It took me probably 5 years before I could even sit for 10 minutes. And so knowing the place where people are coming from and knowing how difficult it was for me, I just don't have that same complex of like, well, like that almost like hazing of like, well, it was really hard for me, so now it's got to be really hard for you type of thing. I'm just like, yeah, shortcut it. Like get on the ketamine train and just like get your defenses down, and then all of a sudden it's like, the thing that was so weird, an hour ago is like, okay, yeah, I'll talk to different parts of myself. Like, okay, yeah, I'll consider slowing down once a week, and listening to myself. So it's interesting. That makes perfect sense though, that part of you that's like, oh, it's a shortcut, right? And I have clients too that will say, are there repercussions for taking the shortcut, right? Like some clients that are maybe have a concept of God, source, whatever, that says, oh, are we overriding some path that we're supposed to walk incrementally to get to this vantage point? And I don't know, I would love to hear your answer. I'll share mine. When I hear that question, my answer is that, whatever you believe in, right? Like, God is a loaded word. I know that comes with a lot of baggage. God, source, creator, universe, whatever it is, we talk about all of that on this show. But it wants our wellness, right? We were not created to suffer. We were created to be like you were talking about 20-year-old Joe, right? And just like how his fullest expression was to share his voice and be applauded for it, right? And now you're finding a different way of doing that. Like, we have gifts that we're here to share, and the path is revealed over time. And if you look at if you look at any psychedelics, ketamine aside, if you look at psychedelics, been around for thousands of years in indigenous cultures. And so I tell people, if you're brought to this, if you're called to it, because millions more people aren't. And if you are, like, what if that is God telling you, like, hey, this is the next step for you, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think really the only place where I bump into that shortcut mentality is when somebody wants to just take ketamine and visit the top of the mountain and then, like, okay, we're good. I end up really pushing my own agenda of, hey, this is what's worked for me. Here's the internal work that lands that top of the mountain experience, or that supports the bliss. If you're just doing it for the bliss, then I think you are treating it like a shortcut, and you're going to have to come back in a month and go again, because your life's not going to be
right.
It won't have addressed the things that are the trouble spots or the growth areas. Or I do believe we're here at Earth School, and so that is, in that context, yeah, there is no shortcut for touching the place where there's a growth area, where there's a wound that needs to be healed. That can't be bypassed. But yeah, I definitely have reframed my view of, like, yeah, whatever gets you there, whatever, we need help. We need all the help we can get. And
Yeah.
I think, actually, to your point about, I suffered through this, so you have to suffer. The most of my therapy journey, I worked with an incredibly gifted therapist who became my mentor. And we did mostly Gestalt work, which is similar, if anybody's listening and has no idea what words we're talking about. Gestalt work is essentially parts work. A lot of it's done with pillows and sort of talking to these different characters in the room. And then the IFS model, internal family systems, came along to sort of almost like a simplified version of that, where you can just, instead of talking to a whole bunch of pillows in the room, you just talk to these different parts. But I didn't actually learn under the IFS model. I learned in the Gestalt model. And what I encountered a lot of was backlash, that it wasn't as tiptoeing, respectful. It was a lot of bulldozing through and now get in there and talk to that part and kick it out. And it worked, but there were many, many days of just where the parts were totally triggered and totally activated, tons of backlash, tons of self-criticism, all of these things. And so I think particularly with the IFS model, I love now working with people and like, oh, good, you're not going to have to suffer backlash. There's a system that is really respectful and that is really gentle with its approach so that you're not just shaking the cage of self. There's, of course, you're poking around in sensitive areas, but yeah.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And this is part of the impetus for this project with the podcast and getting more information out there, because what I like to say lovingly and also like a little bit sassy and just like a little bit poking the bear is like, if ketamine was the solution, then wouldn't everyone who did ketamine at a rave just be enlightened?
Yep. Right. Right.
Like it's not the case.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's not, ketamine is not what changes your life. Ketamine gives you the access and the pathway to do it for yourself. Like you were saying, you've said it many times. It's like you are the medicine. Like you are healing yourself always. And it's these different access points to go there, right? And beautiful guides that know how to get you there, right? Whether it's through meditation, IFS, psychedelics, once again, there are different paths up the mountain.
No,
the point is to start climbing.
Yep. And there's the whole process that begins when you book a session or when you start your journey. You're already getting those mechanisms. So even, I'm convinced you could also, we do 3-hour sessions here. You could just bring somebody in and say, all right, we're going to do ketamine placebo effect. And we're actually just holding this healing space for 3 hours. And we're actually just letting their systems unwind. Huge benefits would come from that, So again, it's and I don't want to diminish that ketamine is a hell of a drug, and it also does have a huge impact. It's not a placebo, but it is a combination. You're saying of these different.
Have you seen? There's a New York Magazine. They're little cartoons, and it's a bunch of people that are seated and just kind of like sitting there with a curious face on. And then there's people. It's like that dancer abstract painting. I don't remember the name of it. And is the people sitting on the couch says, "I think we know which is the placebo group."
Totally. Yeah.
Which is why we're having so much trouble, such a long road to getting these medicines more accessible, which is why I'm personally really grateful for ketamine, that it is legal and accessible, because until we figure out how to have a double-blind study with a substance that has no placebo effect, that, has very real effects, we're just going to have to keep figuring that out in policy.
Yeah. Oh, and it is such I'm sure we could talk for days about just the nature of the kind of work you do, the nature of the kind of work I do. It's so beyond clinical, the clinical scope often, that there's just so many variables going on, and there's so many variables going on that we don't understand, that we can't even begin to understand. So that to put it in the clinical bucket, it just falls really short of trying to hit the marks of the experience.
Which is also probably why it works so well for so many people.
Yep. Totally.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect place to wrap right now. Anything else that you would like to mention to get out into the podcast internet space?
Yeah, well, hopefully by the time this airs, I will have the exact dates. But if you visit my website, I am launching a retreat. It'll be my first time doing a retreat. And it's called Make Friends with Your Mind. Kind of very similar to what you were talking about. If you have that chatterbox going, you can either try to shut the chatterbox up and kick it out, or you can get to know it and you can welcome it in and really understand it and hopefully make friends with it and therefore have a much more harmony inside. So that's going to be in April, and really looking forward to expanding my own world in that way. But yeah, josephmach.com is my website. And thank you so much for having me. And
Yeah, you're so welcome. We'll have all of that linked in the show notes, so people will have that easily accessible. Make Friends with Your Mind is a brilliant, brilliant name for a retreat. You were talking about it like killing parts off, and that was my early training, was killing parts off until I realized they don't die.
they don't die, they come back stronger.
They just come back stronger. So you might as well make friends with them, because what you resist persists, right? And so yeah, it took me a while to figure that out. You can't. Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah.